This week's meeting for Toastmasters Painfree MCs. We do have a full agenda today. We have two great speeches coming up. One out of Advanced Communicator Manual, and one of Competent Communicator Manual. I did want to take a few minutes and just talk about some club business here. Something we had an officers meeting yesterday. We kind of went over this, but I don't know. I admittedly have done a pretty poor job of talking about our club goals. And I wanted to go over where we stand right now as far as getting our distinguished club points. So the way this works, I'll go over a quick overview. There's 10 possible categories that you can see. This is up at the website, that Toastmasters International website. We get a point for meeting each of these goals. And so the CC stands for Competent Communicator, AC is Advanced Communicator, and the CLAL is Competent and Advanced Leadership Manuals. So basically, if we get enough members to fulfill these goals, you have different levels of distinguished club. 2 years ago, we were the distinguished club level. Last year, we got to the President's Distinguished Club. So Maggie is displaying our banner last year. So our goal this year would be to get the President's Distinguished Club. Again, you see, it says we have 1 point. However, we did an officer training yesterday, so that gives us another point. And we're going to be having our membership drive coming up here in a few weeks, and that'll give us hopefully a couple more points. And then we just have to work on completing some more CC manuals and AC manuals. And so you should see some more communication coming out via email or personal communication shortly here, as far as people meeting their personal goals for Competent Communicator, and then in turn helping us meet our club goals and becoming President's Distinguished Club again. That was one piece. The other piece of information, or two more pieces. One is the tele is in fact this Saturday, and I apologize, I forgot last week to mention that. If you are interested, the club can provide the $10 to group for the morning session. If you wanted to go to the full afternoon session, which includes the luncheon, additional speaker, I believe that's an additional $25, but we would cover the first $10 to go to the morning session. So anyone who wants to go, let me know as soon as possible. We'll get you registered and get you there. I believe it's somewhere in the Minneapolis area. We had some debate where it was actually taking place, but it's in the Twin Cities area. And then also, we met yesterday with officers, and we have some pretty good plans for our open house coming up. It is a Thursday, March 1st. It's going to be in the Skyways. We're going to be providing lunch, doing something similar to what we did last November. So we'll see more information coming out on that as well. So that is all that I have for announcements. I'd actually like to call upon our invocator today, and at least if you don't mind coming up. And if you could explain your role for as invocator today as well.
Okay, so the role of the invocator, everyone stands during the invocation, first and foremost, is to present like a non-denominational statement, words of wisdom. Can be from a famous person, a non-famous person, something you make up. So this is not credited to anybody. It's just something I did find online. You can use that as a resource to find an invocation. The strength of Toastmasters is its members. It isn't in strength in numbers, but strength in our actions. In this meeting today, may each one here give and receive supportive coaching so that we can continue to develop and grow our leadership and communication skills. Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. We will go ahead and get the formal part of the meeting going, and our Toastmaster for today is Wansan. So Wansan, if you don't mind taking control of the meeting.
My name is Wansan. I'm your Toastmaster today. Before I move, why don't I see we have a couple of guests? Why don't we have you introduce yourself?
I'm a returning guest. I was here last week. So my name is Darshan Mahadev, and I liked the Toastmaster session last week, so decided to come back again.
Thanks. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Hardinger. I work up the road at Cummins Power Gen. Just my wife joined at her place of work, and she said that I should look in the area.
Great.
We're up on the web, so.
Great.
Welcome.
Welcome.
One piece of logistic. I don't see our tabletop master, Darren, is not here. Anybody want to kind of think of a couple of questions in your tabletop master today?
Or use our cheater book that's in the bag.
That's a Chris. Chris, he was the tabletop master today. My role as a Toastmaster is to make sure the meeting is on time, going smoothly. Next, I'd like to call Chris, give us a word of the day.
Thank you, Wanzan. My role in the word of the day is to introduce us to a new word for our vocabulary, and hopefully we can incorporate it into our speeches as we go through the meeting today. The word that I'm going to use today is facilitate. It is an adjective, and it means to make easier. And to use it in a sentence, Table Topics is intended to facilitate our impromptu speaking skills. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call General Evaluator today. Mackie, can you introduce your role and your evaluation team?
My name is Maggie Batten, and I am pleased to be your general evaluator for today. What my role will be to first of all introduce the teams that are critiquing the speeches and the table topics, extemporaneous speeches as well. And then I will do a brief wrap up and a summary at the very end of the meeting. So I would like to call upon several of the evaluators that will be listening for, and what their specific roles are. So as I call them, could you please kindly just explain what it is that you will be doing, especially with the evaluators for the two speeches that we have today. And evaluator one, we have John, who will be critiquing Sheila Mina's.
I'll be evaluating Sheila on her speech. It's going to be project number 2 out of her Advanced Communicator Interpretive Reading Manual. This is going to be, the topic is interpreting poetry. The objectives for the speech are to understand the difference between poetry and prose, to recognize how the poet uses imagery, rhythm, meter, cadence to display emotions, as well as where you want to pay attention to Sheila as she applies different vocal varieties that add into the effectiveness of the reading.
Terrific. We also have a second speech today by Deb, and her critique will be given by Tom.
Today, Deb is going to be giving her speech from the Competent Communicator Manual from Project 6, and that's the vocal variety. The speaker is to use a voice that is pleasing to listen to, with proper balance of volume, pitch, and rate, and use pauses to enhance his or her message. The speaker's voice should reflect and add meaning to the thoughts he or she is presenting. The speaker is to incorporate lessons learned in previous projects about purpose, organization, word usage, and body language.
Perfect, and we'll just keep those in mind as we're listening to their speeches as well. To round out the rest of the evaluation team, we have someone who's that we call a grammarian or an counter. And today's counter, grammarian / is Sarah.
It's true. Thank you. So my role is to listen to everyone's speech and give a report at the end of the session on any crutch words or clutches, such as ums, ers, inappropriate fillers, and but, so, well, okay, distracting noises, lip smacks, wimpy words, kinda, sorta, I think, and misused words like whatever or other. Back to you.
Very nice. We also have a person who will be taking the minutes of the meeting, and that is Lori. Wave Lori. She's also subbing as videographer as well. I'm sorry, is it Eric? Pardon me.
Oh,
Eric
yeah.
is taking the minutes. Sorry, I had that backwards, so there's Eric.
That's okay.
And then everyone will receive a copy of the minutes of the meeting afterwards. Our last but not least, we have a very important role in a timer who will keep us all on task with the timing duties, and that would be
Me.
that would be Lori.
Sure. Okay. As my role as a timer, I will just record the length of the speeches and give them a clue as to how they're performing on their time. And green is go, yellow is kind of a warning, and red means that they have gone over. And this is very important for when they present at a speech contest, because if you do go over, your speech will be disqualified. So it's a good practice in your timing of your speeches. Maggie?
Great, thank you very much. That rounds out the evaluation team so much.
Thanks, Maggie.
Yeah.
We have full agenda today. Our speaker number one is Sheila. Sheila will be doing her advanced menu. Speech number two, she never thought these books would ever be so useful after her classes in Scotland. Until now, when she's working out of interpretive reading advanced menu. Sheila is doing speech number two from the menu, interpreting poetry. Let's hear from Sheila.
In Praise of Limestone is by W.H. Auden. It was written in Italy in 1948. The author, Auden's limestone landscape has been interpreted as a combination of Mediterranean civilization and the human body. In Praise of Limestone was among the first poems written during his summers at Ischia, which is an island off the Gulf of Naples. One interpretation, limestone is characteristic of the Mediterranean landscape. The properties of the sedimentary rock represent the sedentary and domestic picture of the Mediterranean culture. However, the calcium in the landscape makes it water soluble and easily eroded. But limestone builds up over time with organic matter, which signifies the history of the Mediterranean civilization. Yet others have interpreted this to mean the limestone representing the poet's homeland, which is Yorkshire. In yet another interpretation, the limestone is compared to the human body, whose characteristics correspond to those of the human body, which the poet recognizes that this limestone landscape, like the body, is not witness to great historical events because of its erosion. Limestone questions the valuation of that which exists beyond the body, like politics, fascination with consciousness, and other abstractions. The landscape is also justified in theological terms, stating that the body's sacred significance. This interpretation is consistent with the poet's statements about the theological importance of the body. In Praise of Limestone, if it form the one landscape that we, the inconstant ones, are consistently homesick for, this is chiefly because it dissolves in water. Mark these rounded slopes with their surface fragments of time, and beneath, the secret system of caves and conduits. Here are the springs that spread out everywhere with a chuckle, its own little ravine whose cliffs entertain the butterfly and the lizard. Examine this region of short distances and definite places. What could be more like a mother or a fitter background for her son and a flirtatious male who lounges against a rock in the sunlight, never doubting that for all his faults that he has loved, whose work are but extensions of his power to charm. From weathered outcrop to hilltop temple, from appearing waters to conspicuous fountains, from a wild to a formal vineyard. are ingenious but short steps that a child's wish to receive more attention than his brothers, whether by pleasing or teasing, can easily take. Watch then the band of rivals as they come up and down, their steep stone generals in 2s and 3s, at times arm in arm, but never, thank God, in step. Or engaged on the shady side of a square at midday, in voluble disclosure, knowing each other too well to think there are any important secrets. Unable to conceive a God whose temper tantrums are moral, and not to be pacified by a clever line or a good lay. For accustomed to a stone that responds, of a crater whose blazing fury could not be fixed, adjusting to the local needs of valleys where everything can be touched or reached by walking. Their eyes have never looked into infinite space, through the lattice work of a nomad's comb. Born lucky, their legs have never encountered fungi. And insects of the jungle, the monstrous forms and lives with which we have nothing we like to hope in common. So when one of them goes bad, the way his mind works remains comprehensible. To become a pimp or deal in fake jewelry or ruin a fine tenor voice. For effects that bring down the house could happen to all but the best and the worst of us. That is why I suppose the best and worst of us never stayed here long, but sought in moderate soils, where the beauty was not so external, the light less public in the meaning of life, something more than a mad camp. Come, cried the granite waste, how evasive is your humor, how accidental your kindest kiss, how permanent is death. Saints to be slipped away sight. Come, cried the clays and gravels. On our plains there is room for armies to drill, and rivers waiting to be tamed, and slaves to construct you a tomb. In the grand manner, soft at the earth is mankind, and both need to be altered. Intended Caesars rose and left, slamming the door. But the really reckless were fetched by an older, colder voice, an oceanic whisper. I am the solitude that asks and promises nothing. That is how I shall set you free. There is no love. There are only various enemies, all of them sad. They were right, my dear. All those voices were right, and still are. This land is not the sweet home that it looks, nor its peace and historical calm of a sight, where something that settled once and for all, a backward and dilapidated province, connected to the big busy world by a tunnel, with a certain seedy appeal. And is that all it is now? No, not quite. It is a worldly duty which, in spite of itself, it does not neglect, but calls into question. All the great powers assume. It disturbs our rights. The poet, admired for his earnest habit of calling the sun, his mind puzzled, is made easy by these marble statues which so obviously doubt his anti-mythological myth. And these gamins, pursuing the scientist down the tiled colonnade which such lively offers rebuke his concern for nature's remotest aspects. I too am reproached for what and how much you know, not to lose time, not to get caught, not to be left behind, not to please, but to resemble the beasts who represent themselves, or the thing like water or stone, whose conduct can be predicted. These are our common prayer, whose greatest comfort is music, which can be made anywhere, is invisible, and does not smell. Insofar as we have to look forward to death as a fact, no doubt we are right. But sins can be forgiven. If bodies rise from the dead, these modifications of matter into innocent athletes and gesticulating fountains, made solely for pleasure, make a further point. The blessed will not care at what angle they are regarded from. Having nothing to hide, dear, I know nothing of either. But when I try to imagine faultless love, or the life to come, what I hear is the murmur of underground streams, and what I see is a limestone landscape. Mr. Toastmaster?
I'll give you about 45 seconds to write the evaluation for Sheila.
just as a reminder for Sheila's speech, when you're writing your evaluation, pay attention to the vocal varieties and how she portrayed the poet's use of imagery, rhythm, meter, cadence, and how that adds to the emotion of the poem.
Next speaker is Deborah. Her speech is in the Competent Communication, book number 6, Vocal Variety. In 1961, Dr. Seuss wrote Snitches, a story about prejudice and equality at a level that even children can understand. This book has been used in schools to facilitate discussion around discrimination and seclusion, among other topics. She loves Dr. Seuss books for their message, their rhyming, and most of all, the overall goofiness. Let's hear from Deborah.
So I read this book to my kids at night, and even they can grasp the concept. So it's a very entertaining story, but it also has a great message. The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. Now the star belly Sneetches have bellies with stars. The plain belly Sneetches have none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small. You might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star belly Sneetches would brag, "We're the best kind of Sneetch on the beaches." With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort. We'll have nothing to do with the plain bellied sort. And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. When the star bellied children went out to play ball, could a plain belly get in the game? Not at all. You could only play if your bellies had stars, and the plain belly children had none upon theirs. When the star belly Sneetches had Frankfurter roasts, or picnics or parties or marshmallow toasts, they never invited the plain belly Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark on the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them, year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the plain belly Sneetches were moping and doping alone on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. "My friends," he announced in a voice clear and keen. My name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need, and my prices are low, and I work at great speed. And my work is 100% guaranteed. Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. And he said, you want stars like a star-belly sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard. So they clambered inside, and the big machine roared. And it clunked, and it bonked, and it jerked, and it burped, and it bopped them about. But the thing really worked. When the plain belly sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start. We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties. And now we can go to your Frankfurter parties. Good grief, groaned the ones who had stars at the first. We're still the best sneetches, and they are the worst. But now, how in the world will we know, they all frowned, if which kind is what kind, or the other way around? Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, things are not as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who? That is perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best sneetches on beaches, and all it will cost you is $10 eaches. Belly stars are no longer in style, said McBean. What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars so you won't look like sneetches who have them on theirs. And that handy machine worked very precisely, removed all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then, with snoots in the air, they paraded about, and they opened their beaks and they let out a shout. We know who is who, now there isn't a doubt. The best kind of sneetches are sneetches without. Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guessed, things got really a horrible mess. All the rest of that day, on those wild, screaming beaches, the fix-it-up chappie kept fixing up sneetches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machines they raced round and about again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money, they kept running through, until neither the plane nor the star belly knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then, when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. They never will learn. You can't teach a sneetch. But McBean was quite wrong, I'm happy to say, that the sneetches got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that sneetches are sneetches, and no kind of sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day, all the sneetches forgot about stars, and whether they had one or not upon Mars.
I think that's something that I can. Take a minute and a half to do the evaluation. Now I'd like to call tabletop master Chris to give us tabletop. Chris, can you just briefly explain what's the role of a tabletop master?
Yes. My name is Chris, and today I will be playing the role of Table Topics Master. And in this role, the purpose is to bring up our members and give everyone a chance to speak who wants to speak. And it will be an extemporaneous topic, so I will ask them a question after they come up here, so they won't have any chance to prepare. And they will have, I think, 1 to 2 minutes. 1 to 2 minutes to respond to that question. And I have 4 questions. Whatever we have time for, just let me know. I need to stop. So do I have well, first of all, my general topic, because we had a reading from a poem and also from a Dr. Seuss book, my general topic is that of books. So you at least have an idea of what we're going to talk about. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer for the first table topic? I see Gary. Gary, why don't you come on?
So writing down your notes isn't going to help.
Pretending to write down notes.
Yeah.
So Gary, I'm going to ask you a question that we've always had on our minds about books. Should books be allowed to be turned into movies? Why or why not?
I believe that books should be allowed to be turned into movies because some of the best movies that we have been able to watch have been made from books. And especially I like some of the movies made from John Grisham and some of his books, such as A Painted House. I remember that because I grew up on a farm. I kind of enjoyed that movie because it was about a kid growing up on a farm as well in the South. So I especially like the movies that are written about books which are true stories, and I think they really makes the books come to life. And finally, I'm not very much of a reader, so I really like to read movies so I can see what the book was about.
Save the best for last. Do I have another volunteer? And I use the word generously. Tom. So I guess to begin with, I need to make sure you fall in the right category. Are you a person that reads books as opposed to watches the movie?
I was going to do both.
Okay. So since you read books, I have this question for you. What book do you wish that you wrote and why?
I had to think a little bit about that one. The book that I wish that I had wrote is a book I read this past summer. It's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And in the book, he describes how the main character finds the deeper meaning of life through his journey through the desert, where he encounters an alchemist after having decided to leave his homeland. He leaves his homeland. He spends a little bit of time on this journey because he wants to see the castles of distant lands and find out what's out there beyond his own borders. As he leaves, he gets a little bit sidetracked. He spends some time volunteering his help at a glassworker shop, which turns into about a year-long detour. But he learns some experience from there. He goes out into the desert. At one point, he gets robbed. He meets an alchemist, learns how to control the elements around him, eventually gets to where he's going, only to then, I don't know if I want to give away the ending. Without giving away the ending though, the point of the book talks about how as you journey out and discover things about yourself and about the world around you and how every time you travel you build upon your life's experiences, but sometimes some of the greatest treasures can also be found when you return home. And I wish I would have written that book because I would have liked to have had the adventure that the main character in the book had.
Thank you, John.
So maybe I'll just do one more topic, because actually one of my questions was, what's the plot of a book, but don't tell me the ending. So I have a final volunteer for table topics. Last chance to talk for the week.
Meg, no.
I think that Eric is mysteriously right.
Thank you.
Eric, welcome.
For volunteering.
So this will be an easy one. What was, well, I hope anyways, what was your favorite book as a child and why?
It's actually not an easy one. I didn't actually read all that much. I was too busy running around outside as a child. But I do remember one book that stood out as a child. It was, I have no idea who it was by. It was a short little book. It was called Who. It's called You're a Pest. And it was about a brother and sister who insisted the other was more of a pest than they were. They spent the entire book bickering about who in the family was the largest pest. And I remember laughing hysterically for the entire duration and probably minutes after the book was finished. So that was probably my favorite book as a child. Thank you.
These are our table topics. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thanks, Chris. Next section is evaluation portion of Toastmasters. Now I would like to call general evaluator. Maggie, give us the evaluation for meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks, Maggie.
For the evaluation portion, what I will do is call upon each person. I think before we start with the actual critiquing one-on-ones, perhaps I'd like to kind of start backwards and talk about and have the timer and the outcomer give their reports, if that's all right. All right, so are we ready then with the timer report?
Oh, sure. Okay, for the first speech, Sheila, I recorded you at 7 minutes, 26 seconds. Was it between 6 and 8?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, perfect then. Okay. And Deborah, your speech was about 5 minutes, 46 seconds. And our first table topics was Gary, and he was right on time at 1:07. And Tom, you were 1:52, so right on time. And Eric, you were at 37 seconds. And let's see, I just recorded Chris explaining table topics at 34 seconds. And Elisa, your invocation was 55 seconds. Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then Sarah,
All right.
you ready for
Sure. All right, we have ones on. I actually heard one That's it. Elisa, one and you actually did like a, not a lip smack, but it was like a, you know, kind of. That's under distracting noises. And we'll get to that in a moment. We used to describe clutches. Do you remember?
Double
when we
clutches.
or double clutches,
Yeah.
or yeah, right, like a restart of the
Mhm.
brain.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, your word of the day had one. And that was it, actually. And Sheila, you actually had a couple of those restarts. But yeah, it's reading, and I makes sense. I would have actually had a double clutch or a restart of brain. Whatever. And one And Deb, you had a so and three throat clears.
Oh, I know. I'm like, dying.
Chris, for table topics, one one and I think. Pretty transparent. Gary, I have a handful of ahs, and one and. But the ands are actually pretty seamless, but I counted them anyway. Tom, you had 2 ands, otherwise you were perfectly clear. And Eric had 1 And that's all well, were you gonna be doing the evaluators too
Yes.
afterwards? Okay.
So I guess you'll be up again. All right, thank you. And then at this time, we'll bring up John, who will be evaluating Sheila's speech.
Thank you very much, Sheila. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. All right, so I really don't know much about poetry. So it's kind of going as far as interpreting poetry. I was trying to basically focus on your overall presentation and how that applied to the manual today. I thought you used the stage very well. Like your overall presentation was good. It's kind of hard to just explain, but I think you portrayed the emotion of the poem very well throughout your speech. One thing is kind of administrative, I suppose, is I appreciated the opening, the intro, where you kind of described the life of the poet first. However, I thought maybe it was just a touch long. So let's see. I got to a point where I was like, is this the start of the poem yet? So I thought maybe if you maybe cut down the intro a little bit, and then introduce the poem as Leslie Usually said, and now in a praise of one stone by I forgot the author's name. So kind of delineate between the intro and the poem, so you know exactly when the poem starts. It's just something minor. And to touch on what Sarah was saying about the double flushes, I know it's 2 of them. However, I thought it was pretty seamless when you lost your spot, you moved, and I just caught it as paying close attention, but I didn't really think it distracted from your overall presentation. Your hand gestures were really good, especially in the beginning of the poem. You're talking about the stream, the river going through. You kind of showed the windiness, kind of gets that energy in your head a little better. I'd say good stage usage. I thought your vocal variety. There's one point in the poem where it's really good, where the poem was talking about whispering, and you really kind of quiet, and you got that going. And I thought you had good tonal variety from your average tone to higher. But maybe try next time to getting down to the lower parts, and you can really get a lot of emphasis there if you kind of use the whole spectrum. So up and down. Overall, as far as the poem goes, very good cadence, good tempo, good rhythm. I thought it was a very, very good speech.
Thank you.
The next up, we have Tom, who will be giving evaluation for Deb's speech.
So in project 6, it's all about the local variety. And for the topic selection, that was an excellent selection for vocal variety, because I think in reading a Dr. Seuss book like that, we have the different characters. You can almost put yourself into the different characters and then make a different sound for the voice, high or low. For example, whenever you said, "My friends," he announced as if it were an announcement. Use that elevated volume. Great use of that mic to use vocal variety. I like the rate. That's another a good reason for the Dr. Seuss, is it has just a real cadence to it. I was advanced with one. I mean, because it's for children. But Dr. Seuss has a certain feel to it, to where it's very easy to get a voice, a speech pattern that's with a nice cadence, nice rhythm, and I like how you did that. I liked also how you would break it up with a little bit of slowing down. Like, I remember a line, something about year after year, and you almost made it stretch a little bit to make it sound like it was taking a long time, and did that with your voice as well. had stars. I like that as well. I also liked the style in which you gave the speech. And there was one part at the bottom where it says, what could the speaker have done differently? And for a second I thought, well, maybe greater use of stage. But I went ahead and put NA there because I liked how you did it as a reading session. Like if you were at home reading to your kids. Because I think in seeing an unusual style, it draws the audience in even more. They would have been just drawn in as well had you walked around the stage a lot, but like just sitting in a spot and kind of taking people back to their childhood, I think that drew people to the speech very nicely. And again, what did I like about the speech? I really liked your selection of the Dr. Seuss material.
Thank you, and then we'll just take a few minutes, just a very quick revisit of the timer and what we heard in John and Tom's
Oh, sure.
evaluation.
Yes, John's evaluation for Sheila was 2 minutes, 12 seconds. And the evaluation number 2 given by Tom Keene for Deborah was 2 minutes, 3 seconds, so right on time.
Thank you, and then do you need to act as an off counter for either of the two evaluators?
John had an during the intro prior to Sheila's speech and one after, so that was actually pretty clean. Tom, you actually had a couple ahs and ers on the introduction, but just now a couple actually 4 during the evaluations.
Thank you. So what we heard today were 2 speeches of vocal variety sort, and one was at the advanced communicator level. Hopefully we're able to discern what is required when you are doing it from the advanced communicator book. I thought that we started a little bit late, which is kind of unusual. We're running a little bit close with time, but I do believe that we, for the most part, stayed on task. Very interesting speeches, very good, and it's always good to have someone at the advanced communicator level to show us the way. And I hope that our guests are able to take away the lessons that we can take back with us. Thank you to the evaluators, and thank you to Wanzan for great facilitation of this meeting. And I will turn the rest of it over to Wanzan.
Thanks, Matthew. Next session we'll be voting for best table topics. Eric, can you just recap the 3 table topics we have?
Absolutely. Our first speaker was Gary, and he was asked, should books be made into movies? And his opinion was yes, because he prefers to watch the movie instead. Tom spoke next on the question, what was one book you wished you wrote? And he described The Alchemist without giving away the ending for us, so thank you, Tom. And lastly, I was volunteered to speak about my favorite childhood book, Your Pest.
Thanks, Eric. Please put your heads down and vote for Gary. Put your hand up if you vote for Gary. Thank you. For Tom? For Eric? Alright, that's all. And the winner is Gary. Thanks, Gary. Another reason not reading books, I guess. Days off. I'd like to turn the meeting back to our president, John.
Thank you, Wanzan. Alright, it was really great meeting. It's nice to see a different kind of speech styles with two book readings. Actually, it's just another reminder that you don't have to have just a presentation or a PowerPoint or a prepared speech. It is definitely open to different styles of speeches, so it's nice nice change of pace. Just two reminders about the tele coming up. It's an excellent opportunity, not just for officers, just to kind of, it's not, you don't learn just about Toastmasters, just little 1 hour sessions about just, I guess, say lessons you can apply to life in general as well, just little speeches, and you can choose different, I think there's usually 4 different meetings going on at once, and you can choose which one you want to go to, or whatever applies to you in your personal development. Also, reminder about the open house coming up. Remind the people in your group, and we'll have some posters or some 8.5 by 11 papers to print out here pretty soon for you to take back and maybe put up at your little canteen areas in your group. But just try to encourage your group members in each of your groups to show up to the open house. We want to try to get some more membership. We've had some pretty good attendance here lately, but we want to get more people. It's always good to have more fresh faces. So I don't have anything else as far as announcements go. Does anybody else have anything to say right now? What not? We'll wrap up a little early. Yes.
Yeah, just one thing. Our new website, when you first time log in, the member login will ask you for your username and password. Don't use your old username and password for the painfree website. Just put your name, put your full name down, and we'll show you actually your name with the member number. Then leave the password just blank. Then you click on the login. We'll ask you to create a new password. So that'll be your password. So it's different from last time. Everybody will have its own, his or her own password. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, so we are transitioning we're forced to transition basically to the new website. The whole free Toast website is no longer valid, so the new emails that we're getting are from the new website. Also, one last thing I always forget is who can volunteer to be a Toastmaster for next week's meeting. No one's leaving to someone is saying, okay, Tom. Great. All right, so if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and wrap up a little bit early, and everyone have a great week. Thank you for coming.